So the recording starts now. Everybody is informed and has consented to this interview being recorded and transcribed. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. I'm Maria. I work for Edge Riders as a community journalist and manager, and also as an artist and design researcher. And I quite often work from a co-working space here in Stockholm called Blivande, and I'm excited to hear about how you are developing co-working in Ireland and the UK. So could you please start by introducing yourself?
Okay, so my name is Gary Omeara, and the day job, or the work that pays the wages, is I work for a company or a local government organisation called Meath Enterprise. So Meath Enterprise is owned by local government just on the outskirts of Dublin, and owns a number of facilities and co-working spaces. We have approximately 85,000 square foot in one major town, and that would be a collection of food companies, some tech companies, some state agencies, and lots of social enterprises. So it's a very large community hub that's very embedded in the community. And I suppose it's not just about enterprise, but it is remote working, co-working, but dealing and supporting community groups and social enterprises in a big way as well, and local employment. In another region and another town across the region, we have a slightly smaller hub, but much more of a focus on technology. So that's our Kells Tech Hub. And within that particular facility, we have a lot of much more modern glass partitioned offices and large co-working spaces with approximately kind of 70 desks in one space. And we run training programs and acceleration programs to support companies, but then we run lots of events because we have a large university college style training theater, 128 seater auditorium, and then we have large conference facilities and innovation and training spaces. And because we don't have a major university or a college directly in our region, we do plenty surrounding, and because we're very, very close to Dublin, we built these facilities in this particular enterprise hub or co-working space to use it as an outreach for colleges to be able to come and engage with companies on site and vice versa. So from commercializing research opportunities and ideas with universities and whatever. So, and that seems to work quite well for us. We are working on a number of other projects then in terms of the Boyne Valley Food Innovation District. So that's using our co-working hubs and our enterprise centers as a platform for engaging entrepreneurs, academia, private sector with various projects, and connecting all of that together to create an innovation district around food. So we have a lot of large food companies in the region and smaller food companies coming in through the hub that we want to help scale and grow into those kind of global market opportunities. So food tech and ag tech, running at building a new state-of-the-art smart agri hub as part of a European-wide project on digital innovation hubs, and that's a new 30,000 square foot build in Navan. And we're developing some new remote working hubs as part of COVID. So hopefully by Q4 2020, we'll have specifically dedicated co-working spaces, smaller, maybe 20 to 30 desks in different parts of the region. And we're talking to private developers about potential partnerships where we can work alongside private developers potentially to see how we can facilitate kind of developing new spaces that people can engage with locally and then feed into the larger hubs and the larger networks. So that's what we do locally. That's my day job. So as part of in a voluntary capacity, I suppose I'm part of a larger association called the National Association of Enterprise Centres in Ireland. Mm-hmm. And basically that would be community leaders, enterprise centre managers, college incubators, local government owned incubators, private owned incubators. It would be a mix of everything. We probably have about 250 to 300 different co-working spaces or incubators or enterprise centres of some kind, some charity, some not-for-profit. There's a real mix. And NASEC would be like the umbrella organisation that tries to oversee and coordinate where possible. So recently I took on the role to chair that association about a year and a half ago. And it would have been historically more of a voluntary association where we come together and try and share peer-to-peer learning and skills, and we network, and mainly as centers and mainly as center managers and community leaders. Whereas now we've developed a whole new strategy and strategic plan for the next 3 years, which is now government funded, to basically build out a proper structure in terms of quality standards for the network, not just in terms of the facilities themselves, but the services that we can provide to our tenants and to the wider region, how we can connect companies with other ecosystems in other regions or other countries. So you're talking kind of multi-regional and multi-sectoral clustering within the network of 250 to 300 hubs, and potentially the kind of 5,000 or 6,000 entrepreneurs that they represent, not just in those hubs, but across those wider regions with their various networking projects, clusters, and other things. So I suppose the bulk of my work through COVID, as you can probably imagine, has been on the NASEC side, shutting down or closing or limiting what we do locally with our own hubs was difficult, like everybody else, but again, much more manageable because I have a team to help with that. But on a national level, the challenges facing different hubs as a result of COVID, and thus their tenants and their clients and their projects, has been fairly immense. So we've done some work in relation to the impact of COVID on a lot of the hub infrastructure in Ireland, and we're in the process of developing a national action and recovery plan in partnership with government and major agencies to help address a lot of these challenges presented by COVID in the short term, in terms of reconfiguring spaces and bringing in new technology into hubs to support hubs and support their clients, but also then the medium to longer term opportunities in terms of future work, flexible working, blended working, remote working, and all the other conversations we've been having for some time, and how we can facilitate that. And I think our quality standards as a national body will be critical in relation to how that will work, and having a world-class framework as the how the quality and services will work.
You're stopping a little bit right now.
That's me.
But thank you very much. That's super interesting, and there are many, many points here that I want to.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. No, thank you very much.
Okay.
That's super interesting. There are many points here that I want to dig in more.
Okay.
So when you said that NACEC is now actually a larger commitment than it usually would be, then, and yet you're making all those plans for network standards, and that is due to COVID, that brought by this necessity. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I suppose we developed a new strategic plan for NASEC, and we launched that with the ministers as part of the OECD's launch of the SME and entrepreneurship policy report back in October 2019. So we have been working on a strategic plan for the past 18 months that I suppose COVID now has come along, and maybe some of that strategic plan needs to change or needs to be accelerated or whatever, but the strategic plan itself is still very, very relevant. So what COVID definitely has done is accelerate the needs for quality standards, because, you know, historically, I suppose we focus mainly on startups, on SMEs, on social enterprises, and then there's co-working and remote working has always been there. And sometimes you have larger companies working out of these hubs and engaging, which is good. But as the multinationals and the larger corporates and even the public sector have all been working remotely, and that could be the case for some time, I suppose the need for quality standards to make sure that we can accommodate all these different types of potential clients in the future under a similar roof or the same roof, or using virtual online kind of, you know, networking or whatever way we need to look at it. But being able to accommodate them all, we need a quality standards framework faster than we probably needed it when we launched our strategy in 2019. So COVID has certainly accelerated the need for quality standards, accelerated the need for technology adoption and digitization of these hubs and how they operate. So a lot of that is in our strategy. In terms of climate change and other things, I suppose COVID has just presented these opportunities to all of us. So we look at regional development or community enterprise development across the country and black spots for employment. COVID presents an opportunity for these hubs to be at the very center of a national kind of regional development program where we can work with these remote workers, bringing them into local community hubs and try and drive activity back into communities where people not just work in local hubs and interact, engage and help one another, but people come back into their communities and spend more time engaging with social enterprises and community groups and spending more time in the local shops of the local town. So we're looking at not just helping hubs or using hubs as a means to help startups and businesses and remote workers, but also drive regional development and local rural community development, breathing life and bringing money and bringing energy back into local communities.
That's
And
great.
COVID has helped accelerate that. And I suppose when you do that, you take cars off the road, and less cars on the road means less traffic, less emissions. So you're looking at climate change, and it provides a solution not just for work-life balance and everything else, community development, but also potentially the environment if it's done in the correct way. So a lot of this, believe it or not, is actually in our strategic plan that came out last year, but now it's so much more relevant than it even was last year. So there's pros and cons to COVID, more cons, unfortunately, but there are opportunities there, definitely. And you know, like our minister said on a call recently, never waste a good crisis. And NASEC has certainly come out of the blocks quickly to pull together all the stakeholders to try and bring people and have these important conversations about how we can use this national infrastructure and this opportunity to deal with so many different important issues across our society.
Can you provide us with some examples or an overview on how, which role technology has played in facilitating this access and this connecting of rural local areas in the past, and how that has now been accelerated through COVID?
So just bringing it back then to our local hubs in County Meath. So our large hub in Navan would not be very kind of technological or digitized. So it would have been quite more old fashioned, own door access and co-working and large tenants and lots of events and everything else, but on the ground events in facilities that we have. And staff dealing and supporting with everybody in our Kells Tech Hub, almost out of necessity, because it was in a difficult location that over the past couple of years put in a lot of technology. So we had remote access. So basically our Kells Tech Hub did not have a reception for some time. So we had 27 different entrepreneurs and different tenants working in that hub with no manned reception and no full-time staff of any kind. Basically, we were managing it remotely from our phones. So that was done out of necessity because we didn't have the resources financially or whatever to put somebody in place. So we had remote access where through apps, basically we let people in and out of the building or work around the building from our phones. We had cameras coming to the apps. So anybody coming to the doors or whatever, we could see them, talk to them, let them in and out, and they could interact. We had online booking systems, and so tenants could book meeting rooms and people could book hot desks at the facility through our online booking system. We had a lot of coffee mornings and everything, but all of that was kind of done in our training spaces because we had such great spaces there. All of that has moved online now. So our coffee mornings and virtual meetups, and we're not on Slack yet, but we use a platform or started using the platform specifically during COVID because we weren't meeting face to face anymore, called Mighty Networks. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. And we found that to be quite good in that all our community, all our tenants and clients can come together and they can share and interact, similar to kind of Slack perhaps, but more kind of potentially closed and secure for our members. And they can share video content and they can interact directly. So that's been really, really useful. I suppose having that technology in Kells has certainly, pre-COVID, has certainly helped because our centres never shut down completely, but obviously limited access for a lot of people. People can't necessarily go there, but essential services had to still go to the centres, so we had to keep them open. So in Kells, for example, being able to manage the facility pretty much from a mobile phone was a huge boon or a huge plus for us during this crisis. It was a little bit more difficult managing the larger facility that didn't have that technology. So we had to actually go in and interact face to face, which was more challenging, I suppose, during the crisis. So the intention would be to put that kind of technology into all our hubs, not just for crisis mode, but because it actually does make it more efficient. We can collect information and data that can be used to kind of help our tenants and make our services more amenable. And in terms of Zoom and Microsoft Teams, I suppose, like everybody else in the world, we're zoomed out and we're on Microsoft Teams and Zoom every day, and it's quite relentless, but we're doing that weekly and bi-weekly kind of meetings with all our tenants, and they're interacting with themselves, and we're running events and webinars like everybody else, more than we ever did.
Okay.
And I think going forward, we will always do a version of that. But personally, I think face-to-face interaction, you know, is great for creativity and innovation. And I think as much finding a blended approach to kind of online and offline in terms of how we train, how we network, interact, run our events is certainly, you know, our focus going forward, not just locally, but nationally as a network of hubs.
Okay, great. Could you explain a bit more what you mean with the Mighty Network technology?
So basically, Mighty Networks is like a closed kind of network platform that we can invite people to. So simply by email, we invite them into the network, and it's totally kind of remote online, and people can basically, it's like a social media platform, basically, Mighty Networks, where people literally come in and they interact, they call, they message, you get the app to your phone, so you get notifications like you would on LinkedIn or Facebook. And they share content, and we can put up templates and lots of information to help other centres. And we've used it, it's been an amazing communication tool actually during the crisis. We never had it before. So during the crisis, basically questions or queries or access to resources or knowledge that can help others, people are just sharing everything into Mighty Networks, and it's like a social media ongoing conversation that just evolves and happens every single day. It's nonstop, and people can comment and like and share and everything else. So that was set up specific at the start of kind of the lockdown, just to give people, because I'll be straight or honest, a lot of the interaction or conversation was coming through me as the chair through the National Association or through the executive committee, and that was really difficult, as you can imagine, lots of questions coming at us and that we were trying to deal with and answer. So we set up the network basically and got everybody onto it so they could interact with each other, and it's been a major crutch and a major kind of support for the entire network. The plan is to eventually expand that out further, so that we can engage non-members and then kind of take them through the process, obviously, of becoming full members of the network as we build that out as part of our strategic plan. What Mighty Networks does allow, and we haven't gone there yet, is the ability to run training programs and various types of training online through webinar or various kind of technologies that they use, and monetize that training. So it'll allow individual hubs who maybe have skills in a certain area to maybe run a training program online and monetize it for other hubs and other members to avail of. And eventually we'll allow companies from those hubs to come onto that platform as well, and they will be able to share and learn and monetize training and development programs. So we kind of got it, one, because it's an opportunity to share, interact and engage, but the training element and the events side of Mighty Networks is what we're really interested in the future as we start coming out of this, and how that might be able to support that. And we've yet to explore that further. But Mighty Networks is actually very, very interesting, and very, very good app. Yeah.
Do I understand correctly that you rolled that out when the crisis started? Was it coincidentally, or?
No, specifically looking for something that was, I suppose, secure, that we could meet through and share information through securely. So we were looking for a platform, and just social media or email or WhatsApp, like none of them really, they weren't good enough. We do weekly Zoom calls and bi-weekly Zoom calls as a national network. So we set up a link in March for Zoom that just works every Friday at 1 o'clock. And we have another link for another topic that works every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. And so we set them up and they've been consistent all the way through. But again, there's always that need, I think, you know, for people, whenever it may come to them or whatever, they jump off a call or somebody asks a question, to maybe pop something into Mighty Networks through their phone on the app, and within a couple of minutes somebody from anywhere in the country has a response or can send on information that deals with that problem. So I went looking for something specific to helping people interact and engage and help each other through the crisis, and we found that, and that has worked quite well. I'm sure there's probably other options out there, but that's the one that we found, and we looked for it specifically because of the crisis. But we'll keep it. It's amazing, like, and a great potential for kind of virtual and online interaction and interactivity between the members. It's fantastic.
That's great. I would be interested in your experience with the adoption rates of this new technology, as well as with things like digital coffee meetings during the crisis.
Yeah, I suppose when we look at NASEC, if I'm to be honest, you know, and this is why we had to do a new strategic plan, I suppose NASEC, while the individual parts or members, or some of the individual parts or individual members would be very advanced in what they did and how they embraced technology and how they supported companies and developed their local ecosystems and everything, and we'd be one of them. The problem was that as a national body or a national association, that was not reflected at a national level. So therefore, a lot of that great technology and information and learning wasn't being transferred in a balanced way or a structured way across the entire network. So basically, the network potentially wasn't doing the right job or the job it could be doing in terms of making sure sharing information and knowledge and helping other centers to kind of raise the quality standard of what they were doing. So the purpose of the strategy was really to try and fix that and create a national body that could not be so much like a football club association of volunteers trying to help one another, but a professional association, a legal entity with a strong budget and a full-time team, which we will have in the coming months. We will start developing we'll have a full-time CEO with some administration staff, all government funded, to build a team that can deliver the strategy and turn the network into a professional body that becomes the lobby group and the education group and everything that is required for the entire sector to evolve. So pre the development of the strategic plan last year, I suppose, yes, lots of us were doing good work individually, but as a network, we weren't. So NASEC, we weren't even meeting online, to be honest with you. All our meetings were face-to-face meetings where we would travel to different parts of the country and to different hubs. And in a way that was good because different people got to see different hubs and interact with other managers and learn about other regions and meet other companies. So it was all quite a positive. But we never use Zoom, or we never know. I've been using Zoom, and individually members are using these technologies, but as a national body, we weren't. And a lot of the members weren't. So many of those who would have been quite resistant to going online and doing meetings and various other things and even events pre kind of summer of 2019 and probably wouldn't have been very au fait with those type of technologies, which is probably why they were resistant. They're all embracing them now. And I suppose it's probably not out of choice. Let's be realistic. For a lot of people, it's not by choice. It is out of necessity. You know, a lot of us are not remote working by choice. I've been remote working on and off for years, and flexible working more so, a blended approach. But a lot of people have that structure and like that structure, and working at home isn't ideal, or they don't have access to quality broadband, or the children in the house for whatever reason, or they just don't understand the technologies. But now I've seen people that, you know, have never done online meetings or use Skype or whatever. Now all of a sudden they're totally interacting and loving the technology and actually enjoying working remotely. You know, once you put their computer at home and they have the high-speed broadband and you plug them into and digitize them or whatever, people are actually enjoying the freedom in some ways and in some respects. But I think if they're at home, it's the isolation and it's everything else that becomes an issue if it's for too long. And that's where the blended approach comes in. But certainly from what we've seen and from our members, out of necessity, probably more so, the digital technologies have been embraced really, really well, and it's worked. And in terms of Mighty Networks, for example, I think about 80% of our members are signed up to Mighty Networks and using it regularly to engage, which is fantastic. But again, that's probably as a result of the pandemic, and they need information and they need support. But hopefully that will continue. We'll certainly try and promote it and make sure that it does.
With taking on these learnings and on the one hand seeing people now engaging with the technologies, but also seeing how even if they enjoy some of this freedom, they are struggling with some of the isolation. And you mentioned before that you are now working on designing special COVID working hubs. How do these look like?
Sorry, special
COVID working hubs. You mentioned that you are designing special working hubs that are adapted.
Working hubs.
Yeah.
Hubs. Sorry. Yeah. So, so basically, with our Kells hub, for example, and we have the large co-working space. So we are modeling small hubs based on the way we built that larger hub. So we have we have tenants in our Navan hub that do a lot of woodworking type, artisan woodwork, kind of very bespoke products with wood. And they have CNC machinery, and we needed Perspex screens. So we used that company to run Perspex screens through the machine or whatever, so that we could make all these screens for our desks and in between our meeting tables and everything else. So we used some of our local companies to create products and everything that could make our hub safer. So, from social distancing to our signage to kind of glass or Perspex screens between desks and meeting tables and everything else, we've been putting a lot of that stuff in. And with our remote working hubs, I suppose we're using that learning and that knowledge. Like we're looking at thermal cameras just for kind of checking people as they're coming in and out of the building, so that they can kind of check themselves more than anything, because it's not required that people have to do it for GDPR reasons. But so we're looking at various types of technologies in Kells that we can add to what we already have seamlessly. But in our other smaller hub in Dunshaughlin, for example, yes, we're creating spaces because the appetite for remote working is quite large at the moment. And where we are in our region in Meath, we're like kind of the commuter belt around the capital city. So Dublin is surrounded by 3 counties, Meath, Kildare and Wicklow, and that forms the Mid-East region, and we're part of that Mid-East region. So there is no way in or out of the capital without passing through that region. So we're very close to the city. So out of our particular region in Meath, probably 30,000 people every day travel from this county or through this county into the city and back. So that traffic and that gridlock, there's about 4 motorways heading into the city through the county of Meath, and the tailbacks can be quite long as you get close to the city, and you have that ring road kind of motorway around it where all the different motorways from around the country converge. So the traffic can be very, very heavy. People who, when there's no traffic, may be able to drive from their home to their office in the city in 30 minutes, in traffic can take 2 hours to get there and 2 hours to get home. So a lot of these people through the pandemic are realizing they can actually work remotely. It works for them, but maybe broadband is an issue. Maybe the isolation piece is an issue. Maybe they want to interact with people, or maybe they want that blended approach. So we've looked at the possibility of working with some partners to create small hubs, and they will be small in that they may accommodate 15 or 20 desks initially with social distancing guidelines in place. And then as those guidelines ease, we may be able to accommodate more desks, but obviously we'll have to have them spaced. They need to be safe. They'll need to have screens. You'll need to have hand sanitization and various other things. And we'll need to have cameras so that we can monitor and control and keep everybody safe. But certainly the appetite for this type of a service seems to be there. So we're going to create a couple of these small local hubs, or at least one anyway, in the hope that people will utilize it. We have a couple of companies then that we're working with in relation to, well, that's grand. We create these remote working hubs, but how do we create platforms in the cloud where people then within these hubs can interact and engage? So for example, rather than using their mobile, maybe there's a landline number in the cloud that diverts to their mobile, somebody online taking their messages, somebody managing emails and various. So there's a couple of companies, startup companies within our region that are working in this area, and we're going to look at engaging with those guys to see how can we make the co-working experience more kind of seamless, but online and in the clouds, and something that people can work on the go. So whether they go to the hub or the office or stay at home, it looks the same because everything's based in the cloud. All their interaction, all their information is kind of cloud based, and that's something that we're looking at piloting maybe in our new hub in Dunshaughlin at the latter end of this year. And if something like that works, we'll look at rolling that out in the other hubs and potentially trying to roll a version of that out nationally as well.
It's
Virtual co-working effectively.
That's super interesting, and also, yeah, to see how this develops now in the next few months and years. There was another thing that I wanted to ask about, which is that you mentioned that you are also collaborating a lot with colleges, and that with the Mighty Networks, you're also developing kind of a course platform. How, like, is there a connection between that course platform that you're developing and your collaboration with those colleges? Becomes do co-working spaces in a way also become some kind of co-colleges in that sense?
Yes, so I suppose in our particular region, we have Maynooth University. That would be the regional university, and quite a big one, again, just on the outskirts of the capital city. So we work as Meath Enterprise and with our hubs very closely with Maynooth University as well as the Dublin colleges. So we would take in graduates and we would take in interns, and we would have students working on different projects for companies. So we will put together a cluster of companies on a particular project, whether it be food or whatever. And then we would bring, could be PhDs or students or graduates in to work on these projects with those companies, which is great for the colleges because it gives that hands-on experience for a lot of their students. We tend not to go below year 4, so we take year 4 students or higher, so that they can add real value to the company and it doesn't waste anybody's time. Otherwise, the whole process breaks down if it's a time waster. And that works well for the company who doesn't have the financial resources or time maybe to look at R&D a lot of the time, or look at new product development ideas or innovations. And it gives the students an opportunity to work on real projects. So we do that kind of work really well at the moment. And as we build then our clusters and our innovation districts, definitely the universities, they would have their own incubators. So they would have on-site incubators, most of the colleges and universities, and a lot of those would be members of NASEC. So I suppose the membership of NASEC is not just community hubs, or potentially in the future anyway, definitely some private Irish-owned hubs, but it is charity hubs, social enterprise hubs, college incubators and accelerators. It's a real mix. And the challenge of educating, training and developing that mix of hubs and incubators is quite big. So therefore the quality standard system is something that we decided, and we actually spoke to MIT and to find out if there was a quality standards framework anywhere in the world specifically for incubators and enterprise hubs, and they weren't aware of one. So we're looking at building and developing, and we've started that work with our local Quality Standards Association, who represent ISO in Ireland, and we're looking at developing a quality standards framework where we can measure activity and measure progress. So that from level 1 to 4, for example, level 1 being a hub that provides space, basically good quality space and infrastructure and shared service, and then that's level 1, and that has to be done to a certain standard, and there's a certain level of training and understanding you need to get to get that quality stamp and that approval mark. And once you have that, then you've got level 2, and level 2 will be all of that you have in level 1, plus all the extra stuff like your startup weekends and supports and training and mentoring and funding, whatever you can do for your companies. And then level 3 is all of that, plus what you do for the wider region, how you interact with the colleges, local government agencies, other private sector companies, other hubs in other regions. And then level 4 is all of that plus how do you engage with the rest of the world. So how as a regional cluster of hubs or a regional cluster of knowledge, how do you engage with Silicon Valley or Tel Aviv or London or Amsterdam and these other big ecosystems or co-working clusters or hubs or incubators where those companies then can interact. So we talk about mighty networks or Slacks or going virtual. You know, technology will make it so much easier for us in the future, not just to learn from everybody who's doing it so much better than we are across the globe, but also to collaborate and engage with and do business with all those other people so much more efficiently and effectively. So I suppose our quality standards built into that is all about how do we engage with universities? How do we adopt digitization? How do we support climate change? Our quality standards framework will need to deal with all of these issues because that is at the very, very heart of how co-working or incubation or acceleration is going to drive community or regional development in any way, shape or form in a structured and sustainable and balanced way in the future. Quality standards are very important, but engaging everybody in that process is vital.
Great. So
and the training that's required to get us all there is vital.
So the development of the mindset, the quality standards and such are key for this, but you also said what is key for that is technology. Where do you right now see the biggest challenges related to technology in providing this development?
Immediately, the biggest challenges are financial resources. So for hubs across the country, if we're specifically talking about the hub sector, so across the country, you know, hubs have tenants. 33%, I think, in our recent survey showed that hubs have tenants. 33% of hubs have tenants who have gone out of business permanently. So these companies are gone. These companies have not been able to use technology in any way, shape, or form to improve or adapt their business. So they have literally gone. And that's a big blow for hubs and for enterprise centers nationally, because there's a huge loss of it alone. And I have tenants and companies and that are not paying rent and can't afford to pay rent. So the sector fast. Now, when you match that up, or when you bear in mind then that with the tenants that are left and with the new remote workers or new companies potentially that want to come in order to facilitate, have to be so or capability where people can either work virtually or kind of meet or train or interact kind of virtually or online, which is probably not a huge cost. But then you've got to reconfigure spaces so that when people do come back to the hub, it's done so in a safe way. And a lot of that extra space that hubs might have at the moment probably will need to be used to facilitate existing clients who need more space, but at no cost. So the big challenge for hubs and for the entire sector at the minute in terms of embracing potentially new technology, doors open and stay alive, stay relevant, and make sure that they can support those companies that they have within their facilities who can't afford to pay rent and can't actually adapt what they're doing or are in the process of trying to do that and just need more time. Hubs need to carry that weight even if they can't pay. So that's a big challenge that we're working with government to try and address. And if we can solve that and deal with those immediate challenges, like all hubs have training and events income and mentoring income and coaching in the sector at the moment, and introducing new technologies and new digitizations is it down to training and financial resources. And are you still there?
Yeah, Gary, could you maybe also stop your video because we are having problems with the sound right now? I hope.
Okay, stop video. Yeah.
Get some better audio if we
okay, I stopped video. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, this is actually better. Okay, no, but this is a really good point. Like, how do you see a solution to this challenge? How do you think this financial means could be provided through these vital hubs? Do you, for example, see the government in a role there?
Absolutely. So the reason we conducted this national survey of the impact COVID has had on the national hub sector was to assess those major financial challenges that these hubs are experiencing and try and put a proposal to government so that government could try and put something in place, some sort of a grant scheme or funding mechanism to support these hubs in keeping the doors open, reconfiguring their spaces, creating additional spaces to accommodate the new remote workers or co-workers that may need to use the facilities in the future, but also make sure that they can help the existing companies and startups who are struggling to survive potentially at the moment, to help them survive the next few months so that they're still there and they can afford hopefully then to kind of either pay rent, or maybe hubs will need to write off some of that rent in the future. But hubs certainly cannot carry that weight on their own. There will need to be government intervention of some sort, and we are talking and working with government to try and make that happen, and we're hopeful something will happen in the coming weeks. But that's just really dealing with the immediate issues. Once we address those issues, we also need to be looking at this with one eye on the medium to long term. While, you know, the short term is the most important piece, because if we don't fix that, there is no medium to long term for a lot of these companies or a lot of these hubs. So we need to fix the issues, make sure the hubs stay open, support as many and keep alive as many companies as possible. But we also need to think of the medium to long-term opportunities in terms of climate change and work-life balance, and adopting digitization and technology to make virtual co-working more of a kind of a viable option for many of these people who want to have a blended approach. So our new action plan, while we have a strategic plan which we only launched a few months ago, we're developing a new action plan that basically accelerates a lot of what's in that strategic plan, but adapts it and tailors it to fit the current environment or climate that we're in, and the newer opportunities that we all see now that, okay, maybe would have been there and kind of over the next 2, 3, 4 years, but we're probably seeing a lot of that technology be adopted. Literally, we've probably seen 3 years worth of movement in terms of digitizing hubs in the space of kind of 3 months. That's the reality of it, how quickly everything has changed. And whether or not it stays like that probably depends on hubs and technology, how it's funded by government, how policy and incentives coming from government can drive activity to the sector going forward. Because it could be very easy for us all to go back to normal, to the way it was in the months ahead. But I think if there's an appetite by government and the larger corporates and the larger multinationals to try and make sure we stay on this road in some way, shape or form, I think that will help hubs. But it's definitely a necessity. People can't afford to pay to use these hubs off their own bat. The companies need to pay and support this in some way and be open to this. And that's much more likely now in this environment. But if it stays like that, the hubs need to have, I keep going back to the quality standards because it's so important. The hubs need to have a quality standards framework to facilitate this change in the short term. That's the immediate challenge. And that quality standards framework then becomes a mechanism for measuring and building and driving that kind of regional development piece into the future, which is going to benefit everybody and makes it easier for government to allocate resources and funding in different parts of the country or to different sectors. So I think government needs to play a very important role, but I also think the hubs themselves and we as a national body and all stakeholders who have any kind of, you know, all stakeholders who have any kind of skin in the game when it comes to, you know, supporting staff with work-life balance or helping with climate change or the environment by taking cars off the road or having a smaller industrial footprint or whatever that may be. We all need to think about what we can do to make the world a better place, or the future a better place, or a safer place. And I think now is a great opportunity for us to be thinking about these conversations and looking for these solutions. So that's what we are doing as part of our action plan. It's kind of remodeling our strategy slightly to take account of the current climate, but it's really about bringing all the different stakeholders from the public, the private, and the academic sector together around the table, which we have done, to come up with an actual plan for the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months, where we can all actually work together. And rather than having different departments of government spending money on similar projects, we should be fine-tuning what we're doing and making sure that we're much more structured and focused in how we allocate our resources, and how we kind of engage these new technologies and how we support different sectors and different regions by working together, learning from each other, working together, and doing an awful lot more in partnership, because in the past we've probably been more disconnected than connected. And I think COVID has helped connect an awful lot of us together much more, and we need to keep that connectivity and embrace it and improve on it.
Okay.
And technology, I think, can help that.
That's great. That is also a great view into the future and how we have to come together with a lot of different entities and develop those standards and systems to have this future work out this way. So thank you very, very much. That's super interesting. Yeah, at this point, that is maybe a good moment to open up our conversation also for Ravina to come in.
Hi, I'm gonna stay on with video off, Gary, just because and Maria, just because the signal's not great. There, Gary, that was fantastic. I was making notes as well. Really, really good, and really good for me because I know you in some ways, but just I've got a much better view, more detailed view of exactly how much you do. As we say in Ireland, you're some man for one man, and I really loved. We've been, you said it towards the end there, in the past we've been more disconnected than connected. COVID has helped us to be more connected, but how do you maintain that? How do you keep that going? And that, to me, rather than all this new normal and all this, I like that way of thinking of it. How do we retain what was good out of the last 3-4 months, Gary, in terms
of
build
it into the future?
Build it into it. I was on a call the other day where someone said, we need to be retaining remote best practice, and for me that also helped sum that up, rather than lesson learned, it's kind of retaining what we had there. So that's fantastic. I don't have any other questions because you've covered off particularly, and you'll know because we sort of asked you a little bit more, and Maria did, the mighty networks, extending the platform out, the acceleration of adoption due to no choice was a really interesting one, Gary, as well, because it's so true actually that's been accelerated that way. So I don't have any other questions. I have a bio, I think, on file from you anyways, and a photo, but I might come back to check that with you, Gary, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Because we're doing the website for the 21st in the next couple of days, because we wanted to get these first few interviews done so we had a real feel for the content, and we do now. Because you're our third interview in a series of about 8. So that's been really good. Have you any questions for us, or is that all right with you for now, Gary?
No, if you're happy, or if you need any more information or whatever, I can send stuff on. But no, if you're happy, that was great.
Well, I just so you know, in the summary I've done, and then this will be transcribed, I've obviously got NASEC's link of the website, I've got Kells, I've got Boyne Food Valley, I've got those links put in there, so most of the information should be there. We have you on email if we need to check anything else. Maria, anything from you?
Absolutely.
Or
just a big thank you very much.
Just a big thank you.
It's all very interesting.
And thank you, Maria. Lovely talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Gary, and take care. I'll be in touch. Thanks a million.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks, Maria. Thanks,
Ravina.
Ravina.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.